Hey guys, tonight we're heading to a place where the wind carries whispers of forgotten legends and marble ruins glow under the moon Delphi. You're standing at the foot of Mount Parnassus, the stones still warm from a sun that's long gone. But the sky overhead is deepening to velvet blue. The stars begin to prick through like glints of polished silver. The night here doesn't fall all at once, it stretches slowly. Like a cat after a nap, you shuffle past low stone walls etched with the worn names of ancient benefactors. In the distance, the crumbling remains of Apollo's temple wait silently, columns standing like a choir of ghosts. You pass a laurel tree, supposedly descended from the one Apollo once chased his doomed lover around. Romantic, if you're into weird mythology and shape-shifting trees. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps me know what sleepy stories to dig up next. And hey, where are you listening from tonight? Drop your city or village name in the comments and let us know your local time. It's always cool to see how far this little bedtime campfire reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander into the sanctuary of Delphi like a curious traveler. The ground crunches beneath your feet, gravel, olive pits, the occasional laurel leaf. A breeze snakes through the temple ruins, and you swear it's humming a tune. This is the realm of Apollo, god of music, truth, healing, plague, weird combo, and of course, a healthy amount of ego. He didn't always live here. The myths say he came in blazing, young and golden, and slayed a giant snake named Python to claim the spot. That's what you call aggressive real estate acquisition. Ever since, Delphi has been his spiritual Airbnb, home to oracles, poets, and questionably dressed priests. Even now, centuries later, the place has a vibe. The kind where you expect something otherworldly to walk around the corner at any moment, preferably something friendly and not another snake. The smell in the air is part pine, part stone, and just a hint of ancient incense. It tickles your nose. Somewhere, an invisible lyre seems to pluck a note in the distance. Apollo is always watching. Or maybe he just left his Spotify on. But you didn't come here just for the view. You came because someone somewhere messed up spectacularly. And the gods do not do mild rebukes. Enter Midas. Now, you probably think of Midas as that everything he touched turned to gold guy. And yes, you're technically right. But that's a different myth. And quite frankly, he already got his lesson about greed there. Apparently, he needed another this time about taste in music. Historians still argue whether Midas was a real king, or just a mashup of various wealthy rulers from Phrygia, a region in what's now central Turkey. His kingdom sat smack dab in a place rich with ore, trade routes, and conflicting mythologies. Some say he founded cities, others say he had a pet satyr. Either way, this particular Midas had a terrible habit of giving gods the wrong kind of feedback. You trudge along a path flanked by crumbling statues, imagining yourself as Midas draped in rich robes, sandals laced tight, beard possibly oiled, with olive-scented pomade. You are not exactly known for your subtlety. You like things bold, shiny, and dramatic. Subtext: that's for cowards. And so, when a god throws a music contest and asks you to judge, of course you say yes. What could possibly go wrong? Spoiler: everything. The myth begins not in Delphi, but in the wild hills, where the mischievous goat-legged god Pan that Pan decides he's tired of Apollo hogging the celestial playlist. Pan, who invented the panpipes, thinks he's rustic. Melodies are every bit as good as Apollo's sophisticated lyre playing. It's the ancient version of banjo vs. electric guitar, and Pan has the audacity to challenge Apollo to a musical showdown. You pause on a marble platform and close your eyes. Picture the scene. A divine stage is set. The earth rumbles with anticipation. Trees lean in. Even the birds stop mid-chirp to get a better listen. And for some absurd reason, King Midas is invited to judge the contest. Maybe he's bored. Maybe he's wandering by. Maybe he thinks he can handle divine art criticism without consequences. You can practically hear the celestial producers groan. There's a fringe detail you'll love. Some tellings say the mountain god Tmolus was the real judge, with Midas just tagging along like an over-opinionated friend. That would track. Either way, what happens next is less about fairness and more about foreshadowing. Pan plays first. His pipes echo with earthy notes, wild, raw, full of the kind of chaotic joy you feel after running barefoot through a muddy field. It's charming. It's sincere. It also kind of sounds like a satyr with seasonal allergies. Then Apollo takes the stage. He doesn't just play the lyre, he becomes the music. The notes shimmer. Birds weep, leaves blush. Somewhere, 3 muses. Faint from sheer aesthetic overload, you'd think the contest is over, right? But no, because here comes Midas. Your golden boy turned wrong boy, casting his vote like he's choosing between food trucks. He says Pan played better. You can almost hear Apollo's immortal eyebrow raise. So, there you are, King Midas, draped in all your royal finery, sandals polished, beard freshly oiled, and you've just told a literal god that the goat man with the nose hair flute is a better musician. You'd think maybe, just maybe, you'd pick up on the tension in the air. The way birds stop chirping, how the leaves freeze mid-rustle, the way Apollo's glowing aura drops just a few degrees in warmth, like a sunny day turning cloudy. But Midas, no, Midas stands there proudly, arms crossed, nodding with smug confidence, as if he's just given out a Michelin star. Now, historians still argue whether this scene was originally part of the older Midas myths, or whether some ancient poet decided to tack it on for fun. But either way, the tale stuck probably because it's the perfect cocktail of comedy, comeuppance, and celestial drama, and Apollo, being a god of music, among other things, does not take criticism well. He doesn't shout. He doesn't storm off. That would be beneath him. No, Apollo smiles. The kind of smile that's mostly teeth and no kindness. Then he leans in toward Midas, and in that warm, honeyed tone of his, the one that usually precedes plagues or poetic curses, he says something like, if you think Pan's music is superior, you must have the ears of an ass. And with a flick of his divine fingers, perf your ears stretch, elongate, flop. You don't even feel it at first. There's just a strange breeze around your temples. Then the weight hits you. The droop. The unmistakable sensation of fur where no fur should be. You reach up. Oh no, there is. But not yours. Donkey ears. Big, brown, velvety, utterly unmissable donkey ears. Let's take a pause here for one mainstream historical fact. In ancient Greece and Rome, animal transformations weren't just punchlines, they were spiritual metaphors. A donkey, in particular, was often symbolic of foolishness, stubbornness, or the lust. Not exactly traits you want attached to your royal reputation. But back to Midas, who now has to process the fact that his noggin has sprouted barnyard. Accessories. You panic. Obviously. You touch your ears again. Maybe they'll go away. Maybe this is a weird prank. Maybe this is just a phase. Spoiler, it's not a phase. You don't scream though. You're a king. You have appearances to maintain. So instead, you calmly, quietly, slide your golden laurel wreath a little farther forward on your head, just enough to cover the base of those fussy new additions. Maybe no one will notice. Maybe you can accessorize your way through this. The next morning, you're back in Phrygia, sitting uncomfortably on your throne. The ears twitch. You flinch every time someone walks by. You order a new collection of tall, elaborate hats. You start wearing hoods even in summer. You invent Hat Day at the palace and declare it a new royal tradition. People start whispering. Of course, they always do. Have you noticed the king's sudden obsession with headwear? One courtier murmurs, I swear his hat moved. Says another, still. You keep up the charade. You pose for statues from the chin down. You blame migraines. You hire poets to write about your fashion-forward vision. At one point, you consider launching a trend called erasure. But even your advisors raise eyebrows at that. One quirky detail from a fringe version of the myth. Some tellings suggest Midas tried to bind his ears flat with golden bands, or even tried shaving them to make them less donkey-like. Which sounds both painful and wildly ineffective. Imagine trying to give yourself a royal irreduction with bronze scissors and prayer. And here's the thing about secrets. They're heavy. You carry them. They sit on your shoulders, right next to your ridiculous ears. And the more you try to hide them, the bigger they get, at least in your mind. There's a very human truth to this part of the myth. We've all had our metaphorical donkey ears, some awkward flaw or embarrassing truth we'd rather smother under hats and smiles. Midas just has the literal version. And as you sit there on your absurdly high throne, head sweating under a foot-tall headdress, you begin to realize something. This isn't going away. Some scholars suggest the myth was a warning against vanity, not just of appearance, but of opinion. Midas thought he could challenge divine taste with his own mortal sensibilities. He didn't just insult Apollo. He tried to elevate his own voice above the divine order that never ends well in Greek mythology. It's like walking into a 5-star kitchen and telling the chef your microwave burrito recipe. And yet credit where it's due, you don't curse Apollo. You don't rage against the heavens. Maybe because you still remember the gold hatch fiasco and want to keep what little dignity remains. Or maybe you actually think Pan did sound better. Bold move, honestly. Still, you can't go on like this. You start avoiding public appearances. Diplomats are turned away. Portrait sessions are cancelled. The royal painter just shrugs and adds more shadows to your face, and yet the ears remain. Soft, furry, judgy, always listening. It's been weeks now, maybe months. Honestly, time gets a little fuzzy when you're trying to schedule your life around ear concealment. You've cycled through every hat known to man, broad-brimmed sunshields, tight woolen caps, towering ceremonial crowns that look more like fruit baskets. But no matter what you wear, your ears keep twitching, listening, reminding you of your mistake. The palace staff walks on eggshells. No one mentions the ears, but they all see them. The servants start to avoid direct eye contact. One brave soul dares to compliment your new headwear trend, but you're pretty sure it's sarcasm. He's reassigned to goat-herding duties within the hour. And then, one day, as you're brooding beneath a heavy, jewel-studded hood, a summons arrives. Apollo has called another music contest. Oh no, this time, it's not some casual woodland jam session. It's official, sponsored by the gods, hosted at Delphi, and the invite list is problematic. Gods, demigods, muses, a few dazed mortals who look like they've wandered in by accident. And once again, you're invited to attend, not to judge. This time thankfully, but just to observe, which, knowing Apollo, might as well be a pop quiz in public humiliation, but refusing a god's invitation. That's a bold move, especially when that god already gifted you barnyard ears for your last offense. So you pack up your entourage, load up your most elaborate disguises, and head back to the sun-drenched cliffs of Delphi. The trip is long. Dust clings to your sandals. The sun beats down. The donkeys bray a little too on the nose, frankly, and you begin to dread each mile. Your ears, ever the eager traitors, flick with every breeze, every whispered rumor that trails behind your caravan. When you finally arrive at the sanctuary of Apollo, it's humming with anticipation. Statues gleam, marble steps echo, musicians tune instruments that look older than your entire bloodline. The amphitheater's carved stone seats are already filled with deities and mortals alike, fanning themselves lazily while gossiping in verse. You're shown to your seat slightly off-center, slightly too exposed, suspicious. You nod politely to the drive beside you and pretend not to notice her squinting curiously at your headpiece. Then the performers arrive. First, a mortal with trembling fingers and a lyre. Sweet, forgettable. Then the muses perform 8 of them, because Calliope is still finding her voice, apparently. Their harmony stuns the crowd, and for a moment, you forget your ears entirely. Then comes Pan. He's all swagger and bark, with a flute tucked behind one ear and a half-eaten fig in his other hand. He plays something that sounds like 3 goats arguing in harmony, and the crowd loves it. Wild applause. A few satyrs throw laurel leaves. You clap politely. No need to tempt fate again. And finally, Apollo takes the stage. Now, this is no ordinary performance. This is a statement. He doesn't strum right away. He waits, lets the silence grow thick. The tension wraps around your shoulders like a damp cloak. Then he plays, and it's beautiful, otherworldly. Each note seems to float and fold into your skin. You feel your pulse syncing with the rhythm. The breeze stops. Birds hang midair. Even Pan, ever chaotic, watches in quiet awe. It's the kind of music that turns time inside out. When it ends, there's no applause, just stunned silence. The kind that only comes from perfection. And then Apollo speaks. He doesn't address the audience. Not directly. He turns to you. Tell me, King of Phrygia, he says, eyes shining with that trademark sun god smugness. Who sounds better now? Every eyeball swivels to you. The entire amphitheater holds its breath. Even the dryad gasps. You want to vanish. You want to dissolve into your seat like spilled wine. But instead, you nod, slowly, carefully. You, my lord, you say. You play beautifully. And Apollo smiles. Now, here's the scholarly debate part. Some versions of the myth suggest that this second performance never happened, that Midas went into hiding after the donkey ears debacle and never faced Apollo again. Others argue this follow-up scene was added later, as a kind of mythological PSS, a chance for Midas to redeem himself or, at the very least, survive another day without being turned into an actual donkey. Either way, the message is the same. When a god gives you ears, you listen, but you're still stuck with them, and that's the worst part. Because Apollo never says, your apology is accepted. He never says, Let me fix those ears for you. He just smiles, turns, and walks off into a column of golden mist, like some kind of celestial MIC drop. The crowd starts chatting again, moving on. No one seems to care that you still have two large, very alert donkey ears hiding under your headdress. And that's when it hits you. There's no coming back from this. You're not cursed in the traditional sense. You're not turning to gold or being chased by harpies. But you've been marked publicly, permanently, and humiliatingly, and the worst part, you kind of deserved it. You ride home from Delphi in a quiet haze. The kind of quiet that fills your chest. Not because it's peaceful, but because no one around you knows what to say. You sit in your gilded chariot, hood drawn deep over your face, the sun bouncing mockingly off your crown. Every hoofbeat from the horses sounds like it's spelling out, "Donkey, donkey." Your entourage keeps their distance. Even your most sycophantic advisors, usually all too eager to speak, seem to sense the danger in pretending everything is normal. Occasionally, one of them opens their mouth as if to offer comfort or make a joke, but then they see your ears twitch beneath the veil and think better of it. Probably wise. Back in Phrygia, you return to your palace, an architectural triumph of high arches, red marble, and far too many reflective surfaces. You pass a hallway lined with bronze mirrors and flinch at each distorted glimpse of your new silhouette. Every time you catch a shadow or feel a draft, you're reminded that your ears have a mind of their own. You double the gods. You triple the layers of cloth you wrap around your head. You develop what future scholars would call an aggressively introverted leadership style. Cabinet meetings are shortened. Royal banquets are cancelled. Even the court jesters stop telling jokes, but hats can only do so much. One mainstream historical detail worth noting here. In the ancient world, kings were considered semi-divine in many regions. Public perfection wasn't just expected, it was required. A blemish, deformity, or visible curse wasn't just embarrassing, it was a cosmic statement. It could shake the confidence of your subjects. Or worse, invite rebellion. So your anxiety isn't just vanity. It's survival. You start hosting meetings from behind curtains. You give orders from the shadows of colonnades. You invent a new architectural feature, a privacy balcony, where you can address the people without ever showing your face. The nobles find this odd, but nobody wants to be the one to ask why. And yet, despite all the precautions, you're human. You need help with some tasks, like trimming your hair, which is how we meet the most unfortunate character in your royal circle, your barber. Now, this poor soul had one job, one very simple, humble job. Trim your hair, keep your scalp clean, and absolutely under no circumstances mention the ears. He was hand-picked for his loyalty and discretion, sworn to secrecy under threat of, well, you didn't spell it out. But let's be real, you're a king. The implication was clear. The first time he sees them, he blinks. Then blinks again. Then makes the kind of face you make when you smell something bad, but don't want to offend the host. To his credit, he doesn't scream. He doesn't faint. He just gets to work. You tip him generously, but from that day on, he changes. He starts talking less. He walks with a nervous hunch, as if expecting a thunderbolt from the sky at any moment. At dinner, he stirs his lentils without eating. He begins waking up in the middle of the night, muttering about his crowns and that cursed Apollo. And here's the quirky detail. Some fringe versions of the myth say the barber tried to unsee the ears by pouring wine into his eyes. Others say he swore a magical oath to never speak of them, sealed by tying a knotted cord around his own tongue at night, which, frankly, seems excessive and deeply unhygienic. But eventually, it becomes too much. The secret is too big, too ridiculous, too fuzzy. He needs to tell someone, but he can't tell a person that would mean certain death. So he does what anyone under unbearable magical pressure would do. He goes to find a patch of reeds. Now, reeds are nothing special. Tall, green, slightly swishy. The kind of plant that rustles just enough to spook you if you're walking alone at dusk. But in Greek mythology, reeds are often symbolic whisperers, watchers, occasional shape-shifted nymphs who got tired of being chased. The barber finds a quiet marsh on the edge of the kingdom. He checks to make sure no one's watching. The wind stirs the grass. A frog croaks in the distance. And then, in the most bizarre therapy session in history, he kneels down, leans close to the reeds, and whispers, "King Midas has donkey ears." He exhales, stands, waits. Nothing happens. Relieved, he walks away. Problem solved, right? Spoiler. No, historians still argue whether this part of the story was meant to be literal. symbolic, or just deeply poetic. But the myth says the reeds remember, and
they repeat weeks later. As the breeze rolls through the marsh, a strange sound begins to echo across the fields. King Midas has donkey ears.
It's subtle at first, a whisper, a rustle, maybe even mistaken for gossiping birds.
But then,
it grows. The villagers hear it. The servants hear it.
Eventually, the courtiers hear it, and suddenly, everyone knows 1HOURS says it aloud.
Not directly,
but side eyes increase. People start coughing suspiciously whenever you enter a room.
Your tailor accidentally stitches ear holes into your... You cloak. You pretend not to notice, because the truth is, you can't punish the reeds. You try everything. You send men with scythes to cut down the reeds. You post guards around the marsh like it's a military outpost. You even order a royal decree banning suspicious rustling. But nature doesn't care about royal decrees. The reeds grow back. The whispers return. And they grow bolder. King Midas has donkey ears.
It's in the wind now, sliding through courtyards, tarried on sandals through the bustling city.
A breeze rolls through your throne room one morning,
and you could swear it says it right in your ear.
You whip around, but no one's there. Just a trembling page boy, sweating under the weight of his scrolls. You begin to unravel Dotty first. It's small. You start cancelling meetings altogether, locking yourself away in chambers thick with incense smoke. You redecorate your palace in heavy tapestries, anything to muffle the sound. You tell your staff to avoid words like ears, music, and whisper. Someone mentions they're hungry for bread with ears, and they're demoted. On the spot, and still, every time the wind picks up, the phrase returns, King Midas has donkey ears.
It echoes not just in the fields now, but in your mind. You begin to hear it even when the wind is still.
You stare at your reflection in polished silver and start to wonder, did the ears get bigger? Here's a fun historical note. In ancient myth, the idea of nature echoing truth was a common motif. Mountains could remember arguments. Rivers could carry insults. Trees bore witness to betrayal. The Greeks had no illusions about nature being neutral, it listened. And sometimes it tattled daughters when the reeds betray you. It's not an accident.
It's nature restoring balance.
You try to silence a truth that didn't belong to you anymore. You lash out. You blame the barber.
You call him into your chamber now, dimly lit and heavily scented. Like a perfume shop owned by someone with a hoarding problem, he enters, pale and shaking.
He knows. You glare at him. Your voice comes low and slow.
You told someone. His knees knock together.
Never, my king, he whispers. Only the wind. You want to punish him.
Really, you do. But how do you punish someone for talking?
To grass. Instead, you wave him away, and he practically faints with relief. Still, the damage is done.
The secret's out. Your people don't laugh, at least. Not in front of you.
They're far too afraid, but laughter bubbles beneath the surface. The market stalls hum with it.
The scribes start doodling suspiciously long-eared kings in the margins of royal documents. Children play games called Guess the Ears in alleyways. You try to spin it. You commission a new royal crest, a donkey with a golden crown. You pretend it's a national animal. Your PR team releases poetry praising the wisdom of listening well. You declare an annual festival of ears, complete with music.
Masks, and yes, ear-shaped cookies. Some historians argue this part of the myth reflects a real ancient tradition of satire festivals, where kings were mocked in playful ways to restore humility and social balance.
Whether or not that's true, one thing is clear. Your people aren't mocking you out of hatred.
They're just done pretending, and weirdly, you start to feel it too. The burden of hiding the ears, the lies, the weight, the sweat under all.
Those ridiculous hats, it's exhausting. You realize one morning, gazing out from your privacy balcony, that everyone already knows. The secret was the punishment, not the ears. The ears
just are, and so slowly, you stop hiding them. You
appear in court one day with no headdress.
The gasps ripple through the hall like a road breeze, but no one faints.
A few courtiers pretend not to notice. One elderly noble raises an eyebrow and keeps chewing her figs. You begin walking the gardens bareheaded.
You host dinners again.
You start to smile.
Not too wide, your ears still twitch when you laugh, but wide enough to feel human. And guess what? Life goes on. Your ears no longer define you, they just exist. Like the weird family heirlooms no one wants to sell, but can't throw away either. There's even a quiet freedom in it. That's the real twist in the story. The curse becomes a joke, and the joke becomes a lesson, and the lesson becomes
life. And while Apollo never visits again, you start playing music in the court again. You even invite Pan once or twice.
His playing hasn't improved, but at least now, you know when to clap politely and keep your opinions to yourself. Some fringe versions of the myth end here with Midas finally at peace, his donkey ears flapping proudly in the breeze like some bizarre badge of wisdom.
Others say he eventually went mad from the humiliation and wandered into the forest, never to be seen again. Historians still argue which version is truer, but tonight, as you sit beneath your royal fig tree, a breeze blowing through your not-so-secret
ears, you don't feel cursed.
You feel lighter.
Like maybe the gods were never trying to ruin you, just humble you. And if you're very quiet, you swear you can hear the reeds laughing with you now. Not at you, with you.
But as peaceful as that moment under the fig tree may be, let's not pretend life has smoothed into a gentle lullaby just yet.
After all, you're still a king.
You still have to make decisions, pass judgments, look fakely majestic while standing on balconies. And no matter how zen you may feel about your new auditory accessories, people continue to talk. King Midas has donkey ears. It's less scandalous now, more of a local legend. Something travelers whisper about with giddy anticipation as
they approach the city gates. You even catch a few foreign dignitaries craning their necks during diplomatic dinners, merely trying to get a glimpse under your carefully parted hair. You let them.
You've leaned into the mystery, but the gossip doesn't stop. What changes is you. Where before the whispers made you burn with shame, now they're more like a strange lull in the background hum of court life, annoying, maybe, but not unbearable.
Like a lute string slightly out of tune, you learn to play around it. Still, some days are harder than others. One morning, a delegation arrives from Lydia bearing gifts and complicated trade agreements.
They're polite enough, but one particularly bold ambassador, an older man with
bushy eyebrows and no sense of personal boundaries, leans in during the royal reception and says, "I must ask, my lord."
Are they functional?
You blink. My ears.
He nods seriously. Can you, for example, hear better than the average man? Are they divine instruments? You stare at him for a full beat before saying, only when someone says something very foolish. To your surprise, he laughs.
The room laughs. You've just turned mockery into a punchline. Again, that's something of a superpower now, and here's the mainstream historical insight for this chapter. Humor has long been used as a survival tactic in the face of public shame.
Ancient rulers often employed court jesters not just for entertainment, but to deflect criticism through irony. It gave people a safe way to process political frustrations.
In your case, you become your own jester, which, depending on how you look at it, is either very modern or very tragic. But this strange balance, this new identity you've built as the king with ears and a sense of humor is fragile.
Because one thing hasn't changed. Apollo hasn't. Reverse the curse, not even a hint of divine follow-up.
No cryptic dreams, no celestial apologies, not even a courtesy lightning bolt. Just silence, and that silence issues more than the ears ever did. You start to wonder, did Apollo forget? Or is this the real curse, not the ears, but the waiting? You try subtle rituals.
You leave golden lyres at the temple altar. You sing badly composed odes into the evening breeze.
You even try fasting 1 week, hoping piety might trigger a reaction.
But the only thing that happens is that your court physician starts leaving you medicinal fig cakes and stern notes about protein intake. There's a French version of the tale, rarely told, in which Midas travels one last time to the oracle of Delphi, not to beg for forgiveness, but to ask a question. You do exactly that. You set off quietly, under cover of night, disguised in plain linen robes, ears tucked beneath a low hood.
Your caravan is small, just a few loyal guards and a grumpy camel. The road winds through olive groves and sun-baked hills. At every turn, you wonder if Apollo is watching.
Listening. Maybe you even hope for it. When you arrive at Delphi, the temple
is quiet. The Pythia, the oracle, is already seated, her eyes glazed, her body swaying gently as if to some internal rhythm. You kneel. You inhale the acrid scent of burning laurel and old stone. You whisper, "Why the ears?"
She doesn't answer immediately. Then, in a voice like cracking leaves, she murmurs, "You were never cursed." You blink. "I what?" "The ears," she says, "are not a punishment.
They are a mirror." You sit back on your heels,
confused, a little annoyed. "A mirror? You walked all the way here for symbolism?"
But the oracle says nothing more. You leave Delphi with more questions than answers. And yet,
her words gnaw at you, not a punishment. A mirror.it stays with you on the ride home. It lingers in your dreams.
Until one day, As you stare at your reflection in a polished basin of water, it clicks. The ears weren't a joke. They
were the truth. They're what you were when you let pride cloud your judgment.
when you mistook defiance for courage.
When you thought your opinion could rewrite the divine. They are, in essence, who you were all along, just on the outside now. You let out a long, slow sigh, and for the first time since this whole ridiculous saga began, you laugh.
Not the nervous chuckle of someone trying to save face.
A real laugh. Loud, feral, unapologetic. Your ears twitch happily.
By now, your ears have become part of the palace's architecture, just another strange but accepted fixture, like the fountain that only flows sideways or the hall of portraits where one ancestor definitely looks like he's winking. The ears are just you. No one flinches. No one gawks. Even the portraits are updated.
A new fresco near the throne room shows you in full regal splendor, robes flowing, crown shining, and yes, ears out.
Pointed.
Proud. You've stopped flinching.
At your own reflection, but just when things are feeling relatively normal, like you could maybe relax into being a donkey-eared monarch with a reputation for deep thought and surprising empathy. Your advisors come to you with a very peculiar problem. There's a poet. One of them says cautiously. You blink. A poet. They exchange looks.
He's
Performing in the city.
ballads. You lean forward. About me.
About your ears. Ah, of course. Because when a secret leaks, it becomes gossip. When gossip spreads, it becomes folklore. And when folklore takes hold, that's when the bards arrive. This particular poet, you learn, is wildly popular.
He's young, theatrical. Performs in the agora, wearing floppy donkey ears carved from olive wood.
Children chant the chorus of his songs. Street vendors sell pastries shaped like long, pointed ears filled with honey and fig paste. You're furious and weirdly flattered, because here's the historical truth. Kings being turned into. Satire was par for the course in the ancient world.
From Aristophanes' comedies mocking politicians to Roman graffiti mocking emperors, humor was a cultural coping mechanism and a form of people-powered storytelling.
You, like many rulers before you, are becoming mythologized in real time, still.
You summon the poet. He's brought into your court, blinking in the sunlight, clearly terrified beneath his smug, performative confidence. He wears a linen tunic, sandals, and of course fake ears. You regard him from the throne.
Your real ears flick once. So, you say calmly, I hear you've been singing about me. The room freezes. The poet stammers, only in admiration, my lord. Truly, it's odd.
Allegory.
You stand, slowly, deliberately. The ears twitch again. Then because you've come a long way you smile. Sing one. He blinks.
Pardon. Sing one of your songs, you repeat. I want to hear it. The tension in the hall crackles. Everyone holds their breath. The poet hesitates. Then, in a trembling voice, begins.
The song is ridiculous.
Something about Midas the wise, with ears of might, who heard the truth in deepest night. It rhymes.
There's a section involving reeds doing interpretive dance. You don't laugh. You howl. You double over.
You clap your hands. You wipe tears from your eyes.
The room relieved. Emboldened joins in. The poet stares, stunned, then begins to
smile too. His second verse has more confidence. A little flair. You let him finish.
Then you nod. Next time, you say, include the part where I considered exiling you for rhyming ears with fears.
The court laughs again. You let the poet leave unharmed. That night, you walk through your garden in silence, the laughter of your court still echoing faintly behind you. You pass by a reflecting pool and pause. Your ears now fully uncovered catch
a gentle breeze. They twitch. The reeds rustle in the distance. You listen, and what you hear is peace. There's no more shame, no more hiding.
Even the whispers in the marsh have softened, like an old song you no longer mind hearing.
You're a king. You've made mistakes. You've grown ears for them.
And somehow, that's made you a better ruler. You now judge disputes with more patience.
You hear the smallest petitions from the lowest voices.
People say you've become a listener,
a wise man, a king who hears everything not just with ears, but with understanding. There's an old fringe version of the tale that says your ears gave you superhuman hearing, that you could hear lies being spoken in distant rooms, or the heartbeat of a worried child.
Probably nonsense.
But wouldn't that be something? Whether or not it's true, your people believe it, and belief in a kingdom is everything. So when the next visiting dignitary bows low and says, it is said your ears can hear the truth. You don't correct him, you just smile. Sometimes you say, they do. You wake before dawn, the air still cool and quiet. The palace is hushed, wrapped in PI morning stillness.
You rise and stretch, ears twitching reflexively at the rustle of wind through the olive trees beyond your window. Another day of royal
Duties.
Another day pretending it's totally normal that your crown has been specially widened to accommodate your unique cranial situation. It's strange, isn't it? What once filled you with dread has become something you navigate almost
Casually. You've adjusted your wardrobe lightweight hoods for formal occasions, minimal turbans for summer heat, and a chic or wrap that frames the ears nicely for winter.
You've even leaned into the novelty. Courtiers now present important documents by whispering them beside your ear, like feeding secrets to a trusted oracle. But today, something feels off. There's a knock at your chamber door.
Your valet enters cautiously.
His expression says he's either about to present breakfast or tell you the moon exploded.
You brace yourself. My king, he says. It's your barber. You blink. My barber?
He nods gravely. He has vanished. You sit up straighter. Now, let's rewind for a second.
Remember that one loyal barber.
The only soul in the kingdom besides your wardrobe team who knew about the ears before the poet started doing open MIC nights.
The one you swore to secrecy under royal penalty of.
Well, something unpleasant.
Yeah, that barber, turns out. He cracked, and not in a dramatic betrayal sort of way. No, the poor man just couldn't keep it in. As the fringe version of the myth goes, the pressure of knowing your secret ate away at him like a woodworm in a lyre.
He held it in for weeks, maybe months.
And then, one day, unable to take the strain, he wandered out to a nearby meadow, found a patch of tall reeds, leaned down to the earth, and whispered, "King Midas has donkey ears." That's it. He whispered it into the soil. You almost feel
sorry for him. That's the kind of existential stress that makes people buy alpacas or move to mountaintop monasteries. Historians still argue whether this part of the tale is purely allegorical,
or if it's rooted in ancient oral storytelling about real rulers whose deformities or secrets were whispered about in indirect ways through ritual, nature, or metaphor.
But in your case, myth or not, the result is the same. The reeds heard
the secret, and the reeds remembered, because not long after that whispered confession, the winds changed. Literally, one spring afternoon, a breeze swept across the fields outside your city. The reeds began to rustle softly at first, then with a strange rhythm.
Children playing nearby stopped and tilted their heads.
The shepherd paused his flute.
A young girl walking by with a basket affixed hand and swore she heard something. A
voice repeating over and over, in the sing-song cadence of nature itself. King Midas has donkey ears. King Midas has donkey ears. You hear about it within hours. At you first. You think it's a joke.
A prank. You summon your guards. Demand answers. Storm down to the meadow yourself.
And sure enough, there it is. A patch of reeds.
Bending in the breeze, whispering your shame like a lullaby. You stand frozen, sandals planted in the muddy earth, the reeds dancing before you in golden sunlight. They do seem to be murmuring.
You step closer, squint, listen. Nothing, then faintly you hear it, your name.
Your ears.
The phrase you never wanted repeated, now echoing softly through the stalks like wind chimes dipped in gossip. You don't shout.
You don't curse.
You just sigh, because really, what did you expect?
Secrets planted in the earth rarely stay buried. In
some versions of the tale, you order the reeds cut down, burned, replaced with silent pomegranate trees or statues shaped like conveniently unwhispery turtles. In others, you build a shrine around them, claiming divine purpose, the whispering grove of Midas, a place where people can confess their own secrets to the earth and be freed. But in this version, your version, you do something stranger. You
kneel there in the reeds, under the rising sun. You lean close and whisper back, "Yes."
And I hear everything now.
Because you do.
You do hear everything now. Not just whispers in the wind or giggles behind fans at court. You hear things differently. A grieving mother's sigh.
A disgruntled farmer's muttered complaint.
A child's hopeful song about the
king with funny ears who listens to everyone. Your ears, once your burden, have become your gift, and
that's something worth whispering to the wind. The hats start arriving before breakfast at tea first. It's a single velvet turban from a well-meaning cousin, then a brocade headdress from a Phoenician merchant.
By noon, there's an entire antechamber of plumed helmets, wide-brimmed veils,
draped cowls, and one deeply questionable basket with holes cut out for ears. You sit on a marble floor, surrounded by fabric, feathers, and fashion panic. because even if the whispers from the reeds hadn't spread, and they had, let's be honest, half your palace staff is now whispering with very expressive eyebrows. Your new situation demands daily management. Gone are the simple golden crowns of old. Your ears need room, breathing space, dignity, and so begins the era of strategic headgear. You try them all. Ceremonial hoods, royal circlets with tastefully flared sides, and once, just once, a dramatic feathered
crest that made you look like an exhausted cockatoo.
Each day, you experiment with new styles, hoping one might magically erase the problem. Spoiler, it doesn't. But something else happens at court. No one says a word about your new look.
Not officially, but under the stiff smiles, you can feel
The effort, the tension.
like everyone's playing a silent game called Let's Pretend the King's Ears Are Totally Normal.
And oddly,
It works. After all, court life is already built on 1,000 fictions. Everyone wears masks, literal and social. Everyone hides something.
you're just doing it with a hat. Still, you grow tired of the performance. So one afternoon,
During a feast honoring local poets, you make a decision. You remove the hat, but no drama.
no speech, just a king, standing quietly as soft gasps echo across the hall like falling dominoes. Your donkey ears flick once, catching the breeze from an open window. Then you sit and continue your meal. The courtiers freeze for a moment, and then the strangest thing happens. They go back to eating.
Tentatively at first, then with greater ease. No riots,
No lightning from above.
just silence, punctuated by the occasional crunch of roasted chickpeas. Because here's the thing.
Once a secret is visible, it loses its power. There's a gentle lesson in that, one historians often miss. Ancient cultures had a different relationship with transformation.
Donkey ears weren't always a curse.
In some myth cycles, animal traits suggested divine influence, like shamans in deer masks or Egyptian gods with falcon heads. Some researchers even argue that Midas' ears may symbolize heightened perception, a sort of mythological hearing beyond lies. Of course, they could also just be donkey ears. You are not above the occasional barnyard punchline. But still, the idea sticks with you, and so you start redesigning your court attire. Not to hide the ears, but to highlight them. Artisans sew golden threading around the ear slits in your
New hood. One sculptor even presents you with a bronze bust featuring your forehead likeness, which is somehow both dignified and oddly charming. Word spreads quickly.
Across the land, children play dress-up with mock donkey ears. A baker creates Midas muffins shaped like little crowned donkeys. A local playwright writes The Eared King, a satire that you fund anonymously instead of burying your shame. You've turned it into folklore, and when foreign dignitaries arrive, unsure how to react, you simply smile. My ears hear everything.
You say with a wink.
Even royal gossip, that line becomes legend. Merchants repeat it from Anatolia to Alexandria. You're quoted in scrolls and misquoted in taverns. And while historians will still debate your legacy, was it foolish pride or wise acceptance?
You become something far rarer than a typical
King, you become a story. One whispered by reeds, echoed by wind, and worn proudly on your head. You'd think, by now, the saga of your ears would settle into a sort of quirky equilibrium royal life adapted. The whispers dulled, the courtiers sufficiently broken in. But alas, you forgot about one variable. Your barber, the poor man. It starts.
Innocently enough, one spring morning, you summon him, as you have for years, to trim your steadily greying hair and touch up the regal curls around your ears. Yes, those ears.
You've grown used to the process, a few polite gasps suppressed, trembling hands holding scissors just a bit too tight, and the inevitable awkward silence where small talk should live. But this time, something's different. The barber is quieter than usual.
Paler, too. His hands tremble not with deference, but with the heavy weight of knowing. He's seen the ears.
Not covered up with silk or adorned in gold filigree, but raw, fuzzy, and twitching in their full herbivorous glory, and because he's a man with
an unfortunate sense of duty and a dangerously intact sense of humor, he keeps the secret.
He really tries. Days pass. Weeks.
He says nothing to his wife, his friends, or the other barbers who gather at the bathhouse to swap client gossip.
He doesn't even whisper it to the mirrors. But secrets, like sneezes, only build pressure when you hold them in. Eventually, something has to give. One sleepless night, he tiptoes out of his clay-roofed home and trudges toward the edge of the meadow.
Led not by logic, but by the gentle pull of desperation. Moonlight spills across a patch of tall, reedy grass growing near a shallow stream.
The stalks sway gently, whispering in the breeze like old women at market. Here, the barber kneels. He digs a small hole in the earth, just deep enough to trap a whisper, and then he leans forward, presses his trembling lips to the soil, and exhales. The truth. King Midas has donkey ears. He breathes, as if unburdening a great cosmic riddle. Then he pats the dirt back into place, stands, and walks away. The wind stirs. The reeds murmur. You'd think that would be the end of it, but nature has a way of amplifying secrets, especially when humans pretend they're buried. Historians still argue whether this particular myth sprang from earlier Near Eastern folklore,
or was uniquely Greek in flavour.
Some claim the barber tale was a cautionary allegory about how even trusted servants can't hold their tongues. Others see it as a lesson in the futility of hiding truth, no matter how deep you bury it. Nature listens. A fringe theory suggests the whisper to the earth motif stems from ancient Mesopotamian rituals, where confessions were offered to rivers and plants as a form of purification. This makes the barber not just a gossip, but an unwilling participant in a sacred, if accidental. Right, but you're mostly just baffled when your secret starts growing back, because a few weeks later, the reeds near the stream begin to hum, soft,
At first like wind teasing heartstrings, then louder,
rhythmic, suspiciously melodic. Villagers passing by swear they hear the words Midas has donkey ears sung by the very grass. You visit the site yourself, but pulled low, curiosity. Piqued.
The air is still.
The reeds sway innocently, and then there it is. 1HOURS eyes.
You slap your forehead.
The reeds giggle in reply. Apparently, your barber's midnight confessional has bloomed into the world's first organic gossip network. Of course, this turns into a full-blown problem.
Minstrels begin writing songs about it. Children invent hand-clapping games with suspicious lyrics. A local potter creates a very popular series of amphorae showing reeds with little cartoon speech bubbles. You consider punishing the barber. That.
Can you really blame him? You've seen the pressure of court life, the absurd demands, the secrets whispered behind every curtain.
Everyone needs a release valve.
His just happened to involve talking dirt. So you let him live. With a very strict non-disclosure scroll, instead, you focus on the real issue. For reeds, Alice advisors suggest cutting them down,
Replacing them with rocks. Commissioning a marble dam with stern inscriptions about royal dignity. But you don't, because deep down, you understand something important. The reeds didn't betray you. They just heard you. Heard the truth, soft and absurd, echoing through the silence. And in somewhat way, they honored it with song, with myth, with whispers that grew louder than your crown. Besides, if your ears are part of your legend now, then
what's one more verse in the story? You take one last look at the stream, adjust your hood, and smile. The reeds sway. King Midas has donkey ears.
you tell yourself it's just a local rumor.
A streamside lullaby. Nothing serious, but by the end of the month, 3 separate traveling poets have composed odes to your ears. One even performs under the name The Reedy Whisperer, wearing
A fake pair of donkey ears fashioned from papyrus and wax.so. Naturally, you try damage control. First, you summon your advisors.
They gather in the marble hall, heads bowed low.
You don't say the word ears, of course. That's unwise.
Instead, you clear your throat and refer to the matter as the botanical slander, the melodic grass situation, the suggestions.
Ah,
Mixed, the High Treasurer recommends bribing the poets. The Royal Gardener volunteers to flood the entire meadow.
your cousin Helicon wants to teach those reeds a lesson with a flaming torch and a wine-fueled war cry.
You pass on that one. Instead, you settle on a quieter approach.
You send palace agents into the countryside to plant alternative rumors. Maybe the reeds were enchanted. Maybe they're just relaying stories from a local boy named Midas who owns a particularly noisy donkey.
But people aren't buying it. Reeds don't lie, they say.
Everyone knows this. So you dig deeper. You walk the stream again, listening. The voice is clearer now, more confident.
It's not malicious. It's almost whimsical. Like the reeds aren't mocking you, they're just enjoying themselves. You kneel down, just like the barber once did, and whisper, "What else have you heard?" The reeds laugh in the wind. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaks in reply. You sit back, exasperated. The truth is, your airs have gone viral.
And in a world without newspapers, TikTok, or gossip columns, that makes you kind of a big deal, you've become a myth in motion. Historians still argue whether the talking reeds were meant to represent divine retribution, or a more comedic critique
Of power. In some versions of the tale, the barber whispers to a well instead of a field. and it's the bubbling spring that spills the beans.
A few scholars suggest this mutation reflects how oral storytelling evolved across city-states, swapping
Local landmarks for better narrative flow. One curious detail: reeds were sacred to Pan, the same goat-legged forest god who started this mess.
So maybe, just maybe, the earth itself is siding with him now.
Nature as Team Pan.
That's a thought. A particularly fringe theory even suggests that the reeds were always sentient, that they were the chorus in a divine drama you never knew you starred in.
Which, honestly, tracks with how your life's been going lately. Still, the whispering continues. Children sneak up to the stream to hear the story firsthand.
Local artists paint murals of the fateful meadow. One rather imaginative boy sets up a store selling royal combs carved from reed stalks.
Business booms, and through it all, you do nothing. You could retaliate.
You could burn the meadow, silence the reeds, punish the peasants.
But something in you softens, because oddly, the ridicule has lost its sting. Maybe it's because the
story now belongs to everyone. It's no longer a symbol of shame.
It's a bedtime tale, a folk song, a campfire joke.
The kind of thing old men mumble over olives and children act out with sock puppets. You were once terrified of being laughed
at.
But now, as you stroll through your city and hear the lilting chant, Midas has donkey ears, you realize something strange. You're smiling. There's something freeing in being known, even for the wrong thing.
Especially when people
laugh not out of cruelty, but with a gentle fondness reserved for local legends and lovable fools. That night, you lie in bed and listen to the breeze. Midas has donkey ears.
You chuckle softly to yourself, ears twitching against the silk pillow. You're not sure if Apollo intended this as punishment or punchline, but either way, it's no longer just about the curse. It's about how the world embraced the absurdity, how a king became a cautionary tale and didn't combust from shame, and somewhere in the reeds, the barber's whisper continues to echo, not as a betrayal, but as a bizarre sort of tribute. Proof that even secrets buried in the earth have a funny way of taking root. You drift off to sleep with a small, ridiculous smile. Because if your legacy is ears and reeds and whispered rumors on the windwell, it's not the worst one to leave behind. At this point, you've mostly made peace with it. The ears, the reeds, the catchy children's song that rhymes king with fling in a deeply unflattering way.
You've even stopped flinching when your reflection surprises you. Those
floppy silhouettes now look oddly regal. If you tilt your head just so, still you wonder, how far has the story travelled? One morning, over honeyed figs and burnt bread, your advisor Cleon unrolls a scroll with the smug flair of someone who has definitely read ahead. It appears, he says, tapping the parchment, that your ears are now being discussed at symposia. In Athens, one poet referred to them as tragic foliage. You choose slowly, tragic foliage. Cleon nods. He meant it with respect. I think, the next week, an envoy from Lydia arrives, bearing silk and spices and a drawing of you.
With exaggerated donkey features, performing in what looks like a reed-based musical. You raise an eyebrow.
Is this supposed to be flattering?
The envoy grins.
It sold out every seat, so now your myth has legs, from island harbours to desert outposts. The tale of the king with the donkey is races along trade routes, skips across water, and seeps into foreign tongues.
And like any proper myth, it evolves as it travels in Thrace. You're a noble fool who taught humility to the gods.
In Sicily, you're a tragic hero who suffered for loving nature too much. In Egypt, the ears mark you as a prophet who hears what mortals can't. Historians still argue whether the spread of your tale was a deliberate political dick-mocking monarchy. Maybe, or just one of those stories so strange it couldn't help. But catch on, after all, a cursed king with donkey ears, that's prime bedtime material. One particularly creative version claims the reeds themselves were Apollo's second punishment plants that grew wherever secrets lie buried. A kind of
divine surveillance system.
Reedy spyware makes you think twice about whispering to houseplants. Meanwhile, the barber who started it all,
legend says he fled the palace and opened a tavern in a distant village.
Named it the Whistling Reed. Clever branding, you have to admit, and people flock to the stream. Pilgrims,
artists, eccentrics.
They come bearing offerings, little wooden combs, carved lyres, bits of gold foil shaped like ears.
One local boy composes an entire poem in hexameter chord, Ode to the Whisper Wind, which you suspect is just 200 lines of gentle teasing. You stroll past them sometimes, in disguise, of course.
Hooded cloak, fake limp, the whole theatrical ensemble.
You eavesdrop on families retelling your story by firelight.
A young girl asked if the ears made you smarter. Her father says yes. That's why you could finally hear the truth. That part gets to you, because it feels true somehow. The ears stripped away your vanity.
Revealed your fragility.
And once everyone knew the secret, they couldn't fear you, or flatter you, or lie to you in quite the same way.
You were real, reachable. It's a peculiar sort of power. There's one version of the myth, recorded by a Corinthian scholar with too much free time, that claims you eventually thanked Apollo.
That you saw the ears not as punishment, but as protection guarding
you from your own pride, guiding you toward a quieter, wiser rule. Fringe theory. Definitely, but not entirely wrong. You've noticed you sleep more deeply now, eat more slowly, listen better to birdsong, to advisors, to the rustle of wind through fields you used to ignore.
You've even begun to hear music differently.
Noticing the rests between notes, the tiny silences that make harmony possible. Maybe that's the real gift Apollo gave you. Not the ears, but the space to hear what matters. One afternoon, you sit by the stream again.
No guards.
No cloak, just you, the reeds, and the low hum of bees somewhere nearby. A boy with a wooden flute walks by, stops, and stares at your ears. You smile. Want to hear a story? You ask. He nods, wide dash, I.so you begin softly, slowly telling your own tale. From the golden touch you once had, to the gods you tried to impress, to the moment everything changed with a single vote. He listens, rapt when you finish. He doesn't laugh.
He just nods and says, "That's a good story," and you realize something. The myth isn't about shame anymore. It's become something else entirely and echoing. Evolving thing that belongs as much to the world as it does to you, just like those whispering reeds.
You'd think that after all this, after the lyre contest, the barbers whisper, the gossiping reeds, and your reluctant rise to folk legend status, you might want to go back to the source, have a little chat with Apollo.
Clear the air, as it were, and you do, sort of. You don't send an official delegation.
You don't sacrifice 1,000 sheep. You don't even bring fruit.
You just walk, alone, at dawn, toward Delphi. The air is thin and reverent, like the mountain itself is holding its breath. Your sandals crunch softly on ancient stones. The path winds past olive trees and sleeping goats, past old shrines now weathered into suggestion. You pass.
A boy singing to himself in a cracked voice.
He sounds like Pandotity the top. You find the temple gates closed. Of course they are still. You sit.
You're not here for ceremony.
You're here for something quieter.
Maybe you're here to be heard. Hi. You say aloud.
It's me.
Again, a breeze lifts your hair.
The scent of thyme and old incense drifts past. I've been thinking. You continue.
About. Well, ears.
Obviously. No response. Not even a pigeon. I guess I wanted to ask why. Not why you gave me the ears. I deserve those. Why? You made the punishment so poetic. Still nothing. I mean, donkey ears.
That's not just divine wrath.
That's a very specific aesthetic choice. A bird squawks overhead.
You take that as a maybe. You could have struck me with boils, or made me mute, or turned me into a shrub. But no, you gave me something visible.
Unhideable. A conversation starter, as the Lydians now call it. You lean back, stretch out on.
A warm stone. And then I thought maybe the ears weren't the point.
Maybe the point was that everyone found out.
That my shame had to be seen. A priest appears in the corner of your vision, robed in white and carrying a broom.
He nods politely, then sweeps on. Did you plan the barber bit? You ask.
Or was that just a bonus? Still no thunderbolt. You stare up at the sky, pale and endless.
Okay, you murmur.
Here's what I think. You list your finger, like a philosopher about to drop a footnote.
I think the ears were a gift, disguised as a joke, disguised as a punishment.
I think you gave me the ability to hear things I wasn't listening to my people. My court, my own ridiculous vanity. Pause. And I think you didn't fix them because maybe they don't need fixing. For a moment, the air around the temple stirs. The wind rushes low through the stones, curls past your ears, and disappears again into the hills.
It sounds just faintly like the distant twang of a lyre string being plucked. Maybe it's your imagination.
Maybe it's a god smirking in your general direction. Hard to say.
You rise, brushing of dust and insight alike. You don't expect answers.
That's not what gods do.
They don't do refunds either. Historians still debate whether Apollo's curses were ever truly meant to be cruel.
Some scholars claim the myths are riddled with long-game wisdom, divine lessons wrapped in trickster flair.
Others insist the gods were just bored, toying with mortals for their own amusement.
Like celestial cats pawing at mortal mice. But none of them were there. None of them heard the reeds whisper your secret.
None of them wore a turban in midsummer to hide fuzzy ears. None of them had a kid ask, "Can I touch them?"
While tugging your ceremonial cloak. You were there, and you've come to suspect the gods' punishments are like those weird vegetables your aunt used to serve.
Unpleasant at first.
Questionable in texture.
But oddly nourishing once you get used.
To them, you walk back down the mountain with lighter steps. Somewhere below, life continues. The palace, the stream, the whisperers. A new rumor, maybe, about your toes this time. Whatever. And you've stopped trying to control the story, because once the gods give you a myth, it's never really yours again.
It belongs to the listeners.
Now, to the sleepy-eyed children, the gossiping barbers, the poets scribbling marginalia in the candlelight, you're just the guy with the ears.
You don't rush back down the mountain.
You take your time, letting your thoughts trail behind like your cloak, and you realize something else, something not even the philosophers with their dusty scrolls and ink-stained fingers ever quite admit. The ears made you memorable. Not your wealth, not your court, not your admittedly brief stint as a music critic, just the ears. They've entered stories, embroidered onto tapestries and whispered between children in bedtime myths. People don't even remember who won the music contest anymore, but they remember that Midas, king of Phrygia, sprouted donkey ears like some divine prank gone viral. A shepherd nods at you on the trail.
Doesn't even flinch. People are used to them now. Back at the palace, things are
quieter. You've stopped ordering courtiers to pretend not to notice. You've stopped commissioning oversized crowns. The fashion industry of Phrygia is still trying to recover. You even walk the gardens bareheaded now. Well, some days. And here's the strangest part. People respect you more. Not because they think the ears are regal, they don't. Not because you owned up to it, you sort of didn't. But because you stopped hiding. Your court learns faster than you expected. A general jokes gently about long-range listening, and you don't smite him. A servant nods your head wrap too loosely, and you just smile. Their laughter has changed, it's no longer cruel.
It's familiar.
Friendly. Sometimes you catch your reflection in the palace mirrors and think, there he is. That ridiculous, humbled monarch. I know that guy.
You've become a kind of legend. Children dress as you for spring festivals. Puppeteers reenact your tragic mistake in noodle-based operas. An amphora painter even designs a line of jugs shaped like your head, ears, and all.
You buy one.
It leaks, but you keep it. People still debate what lesson the story teaches.
Historians squabble like hens. Some say it's about pride that divine gifts should be respected, not judged. Others say it's about vanity that Midas wanted control over everything. Even art. A fringe group argues it's about trust he betrayed. Apollo's trust by choosing Pan, and trust once broken is hard to mend. And then there's your favorite theory. A young student proposes it during a festival. Maybe the ears helped him hear better. The crowd laughs, but not unkindly, and the student shrugs and smiles, adding, well, it's a story.
Stories change, right?
You nod from the royal box, then sneak him an extra honey cake. There's a comfort in becoming mythic. You stop being judged by your decisions and start being interpreted. People forget your taxes, your wars, your strange decision to outlaw forks that one time. They just remember the ears and what they might mean. In this strange second life as folklore. You live longer than you ever could as a man, and deep down, you kind of love it. Because myths don't need to be true. They need to feel true. And this one, it's got drama, music, regret, reeds, and a king who finally learned to laugh at himself. Not bad for a guy who thought he could outvibe a sun god. Years pass. You get older, as kings do. Your heirs stay exactly the same, no grey hairs, no drooping tips. Some say that's another divine joke. The eternal youth of the one part of you you'd happily let wrinkle. Your joints ache more now. You take fewer walks, speak in shorter bursts, and sometimes forget the name of the court musician who's played for you every week since the Apollo incident.
You remember his laugh, though.
That's something. You've also developed a hobby. Eavesdropping. With those ears. How could you not?
You stroll the palace gardens at dusk and catch pieces of conversation. A servant wondering if she's in love. A soldier describing a dream, where he turned into a beetle. A scribe muttering insults at his inkwell. None of it is particularly
useful.
All of it is oddly comforting. You don't interrupt.
You just listen. Maybe that's what the ears were for, all along. Not punishment, not humiliation, just
better hearing. The kingdom has stabilized. You are not as hands-on as before.
But you've finally learned the art of delegation.
A young regent handles most of the decisions now, and he consults you respectfully, though he still stares at the ears during long meetings. Trade is steady. Your once famous gold touch is now a metaphor people barely understand. Wait, he could
Turn things into gold?
Yes, but only by accident.
It was a problem. No way. That sounds awesome.
Only until you try to eat soup. Your legacy is less about wealth now and more about, well, character.
And is, but mostly character, and you've taken to writing. Sort of. You dictate to a patient scribe with a nervous cough and kind eyes. You're recording the story.
Not the official version. Not the one with flattering marble busts and exaggerated victories. The real one, where you made terrible choices, laughed at yourself, and slowly figured out how to rule with curiosity instead of pride. Don't make me a hero, you tell them.
Scribe, just make me human. He pauses. Should I include the part about the jug with your face?
Especially that part.
There's a strange kind of joy in handing over your story, letting go of how others will receive it, knowing that someday someone will fall asleep halfway through this tale and wake up remembering only the reeds, or the contest, or the ears. That's enough, because stories don't belong to the people who live them. They belong to the ones who need them, and someone out there, someone tired, someone worried, someone wondering if they'll ever recover from a really bad decision might just need this one. Might need to know that even kings mess up spectacularly. Might
need to hear that divine embarrassment isn't the end of the road.
That you can recover from mythic foolishness. That sometimes, when the wind rustles through the reeds, the whisper isn't mocking, it's welcoming. It's saying, welcome to the story, pull up a stone. We've been waiting for you. And now, as the last words settle into silence, you find yourself
back beneath that same old tree where the barber first whispered the secret. The leaves overhead are swaying gently.
The reeds by the stream are still, not whispering tonight, just resting, like everything else. A soft wind moves past, cool and slow, brushing your skin with the hush of ancient stories. You lie back against the trunk, head heavy with the weight. Of everything and nothing, the stars are up faint, fuzzy pinpricks in a sky the color of lavender honey.
The moon is round and distant, like a watchful eye that's seen far too many kings, and still hasn't tired of them. You close your eyes. You are not a king right now. You're just someone who listened to music.
To mistakes, to the wind, to the quiet truths only heard when you stop trying to be impressive. Maybe you still wear the ears. Maybe they've faded into legend. Either way, you're still here, still listening, still part of the story. So take a breath, let the soft hum of
the world around you lull you further. Nothing is expected of you now.
No decisions,
no speeches, no appearances to maintain. Just the rise and fall of your breath, the warmth of the night, and the simple, sleepy comfort of knowing that even the silliest stories can carry something real. You're safe, you're enough, you're home,